Where I can be, I'm as independent as I want to be. And
Been in the back of my mind for quite a while, you know, the whole...
I think everyone wants some hope and wants some optimism, and I think the Earthshot encompasses urgent optimism. That's what we're here for.
What happens when the future king decides enough is enough? When he draws a line in the royal sand and his own stepmother ends up on the wrong side of it? Behind the polished gates of Buckingham Palace, a storm has been brewing, and now it's hit. Prince William has officially stripped Queen Camilla's family of all royal privileges. No titles, no state invitations, no special seating, just silence and erasure. And here's the catch: Camilla never saw it coming. Sources say the decision wasn't debated, it wasn't discussed. It was delivered quietly, clinically, through a palace memo. No warning, no conversation, just a cold reset of who belongs inside the royal bubble and who never really did. Camilla's reaction? Explosive. Palace insiders say she broke into tears, shouted at staff, and accused William of trying to erase her legacy with the stroke of a pen. But this goes deeper than just royal drama. This is the first real look at the monarchy Prince William intends to build. Leaner, stricter, and ruled by blood, not marriage. And for Camilla, it feels like the crown she fought decades to earn is being shattered right in front of her. So, what's really going on behind those palace walls? Why now? And what does this bold move reveal about the royal future? Let's break it down. It didn't come with a royal announcement. There was no press release, no whisper to the tabloids, just a quietly circulated memo. Sterile, bureaucratic, and devastating. Prince William had made his decision. Camilla's family, once ushered into the royal circle by proximity and silence, was officially out. Their names were to be removed from ceremonial guest lists, their honorary privileges stripped, their access to royal events, security details, and mentions in internal communications revoked. And most shocking of all, this wasn't a discussion, it was a declaration. According to palace insiders, even Camilla herself didn't find out from her husband. The Queen Consort learned of the decision the same way mid-level staffers did, through an administrative briefing delivered by a senior aide, and when she read it, she reportedly froze. No titles, no mention of her grandchildren in state planning, no inclusion in future royal schedules, just deletion. One courtier described the tone of the memo as chilling, not angry, not emotional, just final. This was William's monarchy taking shape, not with fanfare, but with quiet precision. And it sent a very clear message. The crown is for those born into it, not those who marry in, and certainly not their children. Behind the scenes, the fallout was instant. Camilla reportedly broke down in private, yelling through tears that she had spent decades earning her place, only to be cast aside in what she saw as a personal humiliation. Staff described her as inconsolable, furious one minute, eerily silent the next. One insider claimed she shouted, "He's erasing me! He's erasing my family like we were never here!" But to William, this wasn't personal, it was policy. And this silent order, it wasn't just a slap in the face, it was the opening move in a full-blown palace reset. Because what came next would shake the entire royal structure. Camilla wasn't supposed to be queen. She wasn't even supposed to be accepted. For decades, she was the outsider, the other woman, the name whispered in the shadows of Princess Diana's tragedy, vilified by the press, rejected by the public, frozen out by traditionalists who vowed she would never wear the crown. And yet, she did. Through years of quiet loyalty, strategic silence, and unwavering support for Charles, Camilla slowly rewrote her royal story. She didn't fight for headlines, she waited for them to change. And when public opinion began to soften in the 2010s, she moved. But Camilla's ambition didn't end with her own title. She had a vision, a blended royal family that included her children and grandchildren, not by bloodline, but by proximity, not through power, but through presence. It started small. Her children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, were gradually seen at more private royal events, nothing official, no titles, just closer seats. Courtiers began referring to them as part of the Queen's family. Royal photographers were told to include her grandchildren in family group shots. Their names showed up on guest lists. They were given access, visibility, and status, even without the bloodline. And no moment showcased that quiet influence more than King Charles's coronation. Camilla's grandsons, Gus and Louis Lopes and Freddie Parker Bowles, were appointed as pages of honor, a role traditionally reserved for young royals and sons of dukes. The symbolism was unmistakable. To some, it was modern, inclusive, a statement that the monarchy was evolving. But to others, especially inside the palace, it was a red flag, because this wasn't just Camilla being accepted, this was her rewriting the rules. And according to insiders, no one was more unsettled by that shift than Prince William and Princess Kate. They watched as Camilla, once the outsider, turned her family into unofficial royals without ever asking permission. And behind the palace curtains, concern was building, because it wasn't just about inclusion anymore, it was about power. While the public smiled at coronation photos and cheerful royal appearances, something very different was happening behind palace doors. Prince William wasn't smiling, neither was Kate. To them, Camilla's quiet expansion of her family's presence in royal affairs wasn't just inappropriate, it was dangerous. It blurred a line the Windsors had always guarded fiercely: bloodline versus proximity. Royal status wasn't a perk, it was a responsibility, a sacred inheritance, not a social courtesy. And yet, Camilla's grandchildren were being elevated, not through heritage, but through access. One insider claimed William began referring to them, half-jokingly, as courtesy royals. But make no mistake, he wasn't amused. William had spent years watching the monarchy bloat under the weight of extended relatives, hangers-on, and controversial figures who only added chaos to the crown. And now, he was determined to clean house, quietly at first. Internal memos started to shift responsibilities. Invitations were restructured, seating charts updated. Anyone outside the immediate royal bloodline began to notice changes: smaller roles, fewer appearances, limited access. It was surgical, strategic, and deliberate, and Camilla felt it. According to staff, she grew increasingly anxious about what she called the tightening. Her requests for her family to be more formally included in royal events were being delayed or ignored. Titles that had once been floated in private were now off the table. She reportedly asked Charles to step in. He didn't, because this wasn't coming from the top. It was coming from the future king. William's philosophy was simple: the monarchy survives on clarity, not kindness. And in his view, Camilla's blending of families diluted the institution's credibility. Kate shared his concerns. While she never spoke publicly on the matter, insiders say she believed royal roles should never be handed out like favors at a garden party. Her loyalty to tradition and to the Windsor name was unwavering. And so the couple, unified in vision, began shaping a new blueprint for the royal family, one that was smaller, sharper, bound by blood, unshaken by sentiment. And if that meant dismantling Camilla's quiet empire, so be it. For most of his life, King Charles has walked a tightrope between duty and emotion. He's the monarch who waited longer than any heir in British history, a man who endured decades of public criticism, scandal, and heartbreak, most of it tied to Camilla. And when the time finally came to wear the crown, he did so with the woman he loved by his side. But now that love is tearing the palace apart, Camilla, his partner through scandal and recovery, was in pieces. She reportedly stormed into his private quarters after learning of the revocation order, demanding to know how William had the authority and why Charles had done nothing to stop it. Witnesses say the confrontation was raw, loud, and deeply personal. "You stood by and let him erase my family," she allegedly screamed, "after everything I endured for you." But Charles didn't fight back. He didn't object. He listened and said very little, because deep down, he knew something had changed. William wasn't just his son anymore. He was the next monarch in all but name. The public trusted him, the press admired him, and the institution, fractured by years of scandal, was now looking to him for clarity. And Charles? He was tired. His health had been a quiet concern for months. His approval ratings had begun to slide, and more than anything, he feared losing his son's loyalty, a loss he knew he might never recover from. So he did what he's often done in moments of crisis. Nothing. No statement, no correction, no effort to reverse the decision, just a heavy silence that, to Camilla, felt like betrayal. She expected the king to protect her family. Instead, he let the future king remove them like dust from the royal mantle. Behind closed doors, Charles now walks alone, neither defending Camilla nor opposing William. According to one courtier, he's the monarch, but not the one making the moves anymore. And in that vacuum of power, William's vision is filling the void, one decision at a time. It didn't happen all at once. That's the brilliance of it. The Parker Bowles name, once whispered into seating charts and state invitations, began to vanish in quiet, calculated stages. First, it was the event list. Camilla's grandchildren, who had played visible roles at King Charles's coronation, were suddenly absent from invitations to the upcoming state banquet. No explanation, just missing. Then came the internal memos. Departments across the royal household received updated protocols clarifying that non-lineal relatives of the Queen Consort were no longer to be included in ceremonial proceedings. That meant no honorary placements, no security details, no public mentions in official schedules or documents. To some, it felt like a technical adjustment. To those who knew better, it was a purge. Even the royal website was scrubbed. Camilla's family tab, once tucked discreetly under her biography, was gone. Mentions of her children and grandchildren were reduced to historical footnotes, not current, not future, just archived. A former palace staffer described it as a digital disappearing act, surgical, cold, effective, but the message wasn't digital. It was deeply human. You were never royal, and now the world knows it. Camilla reportedly found out about the website update the same way the public did, by noticing. When aides confirmed the changes were permanent, she allegedly went pale, whispering, "They're wiping us out." Her grandchildren's security, once a quiet courtesy granted after the coronation, was downgraded to private citizen levels. Press agencies were instructed to avoid including them in photo briefings. Even royal charities began receiving guidance. Don't expect the Queen's family at future events. They weren't just being sidelined, they were being erased. And William wasn't hiding it. According to senior officials, he personally approved every stage of the rollback. When asked whether the move was retaliatory, he reportedly said, "This isn't punishment, it's preservation." And just like that, a family that had spent years inching toward the heart of the monarchy was pushed to its outermost edge, not with scandal, but with silence. For someone who spent decades mastering quiet endurance, Queen Camilla's breakdown was anything but quiet. When she fully realized what William had done, not just the titles, but the legacy, staff inside Clarence House say she came undone. One aide described the atmosphere as volcanic. The Queen Consort was inconsolable, pacing hallways, weeping openly, refusing meals, cancelling appearances. She reportedly demanded answers from everyone in sight, shouting through tears, "How dare he do this to me? After everything I've sacrificed, he deletes my family like we never existed." To Camilla, this wasn't protocol, it was betrayal. And it wasn't just William she blamed. According to palace insiders, she began pointing fingers at Kate. In private conversations, Camilla accused the Princess of Wales of standing by and smiling while the knife went in. Their relationship, once cordial if distant, had now turned to ice. At a recent royal engagement, Camilla reportedly refused to look Kate in the eye. Staff described the exchange as frosty beyond repair, but it didn't stop there. Camilla allegedly told a confidant this wasn't about policy or bloodlines, it was Diana's revenge through him. She believed William had never forgiven her for what happened in the past, that no matter how much she'd supported the monarchy, no matter how much time had passed, she would always be the outsider in his eyes. And now, her children and grandchildren were paying the price. Even Charles wasn't spared. In one emotional outburst, she reportedly shouted at the king, "Your son humiliated me in front of the entire country, and you're letting him get away with it." Charles, torn between his wife's fury and his son's determination, offered no defense. According to one courtier, Camilla expected him to fight for her. Instead, he stood in silence, and that silence hurt more than the decision. Inside Clarence House, Camilla's mood has reportedly shifted from outrage to retreat. She scaled back public appearances, postponed strategy meetings, refused direct engagement with William and Kate. Behind the scenes, she has begun consulting with longtime advisors, some say even members of the press, to craft a separate narrative. One confidant claims she said, "If they won't remember us with respect, they'll remember that we didn't go quietly. It's no longer about titles, it's about legacy." And Camilla is preparing to fight. While Camilla grieved the loss of her family's place in royal history, Prince William was already moving on, not out of cruelty, but out of purpose. To him, this wasn't a personal attack. It was the final step in a plan he had been quietly building for years, a royal reset. Insiders say William has long been obsessed with the monarchy's long-term survival. He's studied the polls. He's watched public opinion sour with every scandal, every tabloid leak, every story of taxpayer-funded luxuries granted to distant relatives with no real role. He knew what needed to be done, so he started early, one memo at a time. Ceremonial rosters were revised, public duties were reassigned, invitations were restructured, non-bloodline figures were quietly moved to the sidelines, first at events, then in documents, and finally in royal planning altogether. And with every move, William's message became clearer. Only those born royal will represent the crown. No in-laws, no ceremonial favors, no blurred lines. Camilla's family was just the first and most visible casualty. Staff describe his style as modern, ruthless, and impossibly focused. He speaks less about tradition and more about structure, credibility, and preservation. He doesn't see the crown as a family treasure. He sees it as an institution, one that must be protected at all costs. And sentimentality, that has no place in William's monarchy. monarchy. Even Charles, once the unshakable figurehead, is now seen as a transitional ruler. One advisor put it bluntly, William's not waiting to be king, he's already leading, and it shows. Event calendars have been redrawn. Royal engagements are now dominated by the core Windsor line. William, Kate, their children, and a shrinking circle of working royals. Camilla's family is nowhere in sight. The monarchy, once sprawling and muddied by personal ties, is being pared down into something leaner, more defined, some say colder, but William doesn't flinch. To him, this isn't cruelty, it's clarity. He reportedly told a senior aide, "The public deserves to know who stands for the crown and who simply stands beside it." In William's future, the monarchy is not a stage for inclusion. It's a fortress of legacy, and only those with royal blood get a key. There was no press conference, no dramatic speech, no final showdown under the palace lights, just a line quietly drawn. And when the dust settled, Camilla's family was on the outside of it. What began as whispered frustrations behind palace walls has now become something far more permanent, a new royal order. One built not on proximity or marriage, but on bloodline, duty, and unshakable identity. Prince William didn't just remove names from a list, he redrew the monarchy itself. To some, this is long overdue, a necessary correction to years of confusion and favoritism. To others, it's a colder, more corporate crown, one that trades warmth for structure and compassion for control. But whether you view it as ruthless or righteous, one thing is clear. William isn't waiting for a throne. He's already ruling in silence. Camilla's legacy, once carefully woven into the fabric of the modern monarchy, is now being clipped thread by thread. Not out of malice, but out of conviction. And if you thought this was the end of the drama inside Buckingham Palace, think again, because the power struggles are only just beginning, and in William's reign, there will be no room for uncertainty. So what happens next? Stick with us as we follow every twist, every decision, every silent war playing out behind those royal gates. And if you found this story as shocking and revealing as we did, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications, because in the world of royalty, the real drama is the part you're not supposed to see. We'll make sure you don't miss it.